Let me take you into a story that begins not with a medal, not with a parade, but with silence. A silence so heavy it almost buried a man's name beneath the dust of history. For decades his file sat in a drawer, marked with the word denied. No ceremony, no recognition, just denied. And yet, the truth that surfaced years later didn't just rewrite his story. It turned him into a legend. The man's name was Captain Elias Ward, though for most of his life he was simply known as the soldier who never got his due. He had lived and died in the shadows, remembered only by a handful of comrades who whispered his story like a half-believed myth. But if you go back to a bitter winter night in 1944, to a ruined European village where the sky burned with artillery fire, you'll find the night everything began. Ward wasn't supposed to lead that mission. He was a replacement, an officer called in when his commanding officer was injured. His unit had been ordered to hold a crumbling stone bridge, the only crossing for miles. Intelligence suggested German forces would sweep through at dawn, and if that bridge fell, an entire division behind them would be trapped. Ward was given 50 exhausted men, little ammunition, and one impossible order: hold at all costs. The night was merciless. Snow covered the ground, muffling footsteps and freezing rifles. Ward walked the line, speaking softly to men who hadn't eaten properly in days, who clutched their rifles with shaking hands. They looked at him not as a savior, but as another doomed officer sent to deliver bad orders. Yet there was something in his voice, steady, calm, without the arrogance of rank, that made them believe for just a moment that survival might be possible. When the assault came, it came like a storm. Mortars cracked the sky open, and armored vehicles churned forward across the frozen ground. Ward didn't hide in a command post. He was on the front line, shouting orders, moving men like chess pieces, turning a fragile defense into something almost unbreakable. Twice the enemy tried to rush the bridge, and twice they were thrown back. But with every hour the situation worsened. Ammunition dwindled, casualties rose, and still Ward stood. What the men remembered most was not his courage but his choice. At the height of the battle, when a mortar shell destroyed their last radio and the bridge seemed certain to fall, Ward ordered half his men to retreat. He stayed behind with the wounded, covering their escape with nothing but a machine gun propped against the wreckage of a cart. Witnesses later said they could see him, a lone figure in the snow, firing until the barrel glowed red, until the smoke and darkness swallowed him whole. By dawn, reinforcements had arrived. The bridge was somehow still standing, the enemy held back by the stubborn defense of men who had no right to win. But Elias Ward was gone. No body was recovered, only blood in the snow and the wreckage of burned-out vehicles. For his men he was a hero, for the army he was an inconvenience. When the reports reached headquarters, something strange happened. His name was listed, but the recommendation for the Medal of Honor, the highest award for valor, was denied. The reason? Insufficient evidence. Some suggested that without a body, without proper paperwork, the story was exaggerated. Others whispered darker reasons, that politics, prejudice, or rival officers had buried the recommendation. Whatever the truth, Ward's name was crossed out, his file closed. The war moved on, and with it, the world forgot him. But legends have a way of surviving in whispers. The men who fought beside him told their children, and their children told theirs. For decades, the story of the captain who gave his life for his men was kept alive in fragments, scraps of memory, half-faded letters, rumors that one day justice would be done. It might have stayed buried forever, if not for a discovery made 60 years later. A historian, combing through declassified archives, stumbled across a set of German reports. In one, dated the very night of the battle, was a chilling entry. Enemy officer single-handed resistance, delayed advance for 12 hours, casualties heavy, bridge objective failed. Attached were photographs, grainy and dark, showing the burned-out vehicles at the bridge, and a lone figure lying in the snow beside a machine gun. The evidence was undeniable. That Elias Ward hadn't just held the bridge, he had altered the course of the campaign. His stand bought the Allies the time they needed to reinforce their lines, preventing an entire division from being encircled. His sacrifice had saved thousands, and yet he had been erased. When the discovery came to light, veterans who were long into their 80s wept. They wrote letters, gave testimonies, swore on their lives that everything in those reports was true. At last the truth had surfaced. Elias Ward had been denied his medal not because of doubt, but because the paperwork of war had no room for ghosts. And so, decades after his death, A ceremony was held. His grandchildren, who had grown up hearing only fragments of his story, stood in uniform rows as the medal was finally awarded, posthumously, but publicly. The president spoke his name. The crowd stood in silence, and in that moment, Elias Ward ceased to be a forgotten man. He became what his soldiers had always known him to be, a legend. The twist of history is cruel. For years he was nothing more than a missing officer, his sacrifice buried under dust and doubt. But the reveal, the proof hidden in enemy records, the truth spoken by the very men he fought against, transformed him, not just into a hero, but into something rarer, a reminder that history may forget, but truth never stays buried forever. Some stories are written in medals, others in monuments, but Elias Ward's was carved into the silence of 60 years, waiting for someone to uncover it. When they did, it wasn't just his honor that was restored, it was the faith of every soldier who ever fought, believing that sacrifice, though unseen, would one day be remembered. And so his legend lives. Not because of a medal finally given, but because of the truth that could not be denied forever.